everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. I hope your guys' week is going well. I'm excited to talk to you guys a little bit about the future today. This is going to be one of my first looks of probably several on the 2024 conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Taurus. I'm titling this video, Holy Cow. So if you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, please make sure you click the bell button below, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment. Let me know, what do you think about this video? Are some of these things far out? And how do you see this playing out in the world? How is it aspecting your own chart, especially if you were born with Jupiter conjunct Uranus? We'd love to hear from you. Give us your feedback in the comments below. So my goodness, you guys, this is probably arguably one of the biggest transits of 2024. I will be doing lots on this. I will probably be doing a webinar in the spring. And this is just my very first look. So forgive me, there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to be touching on in terms of this particular aspect. I'm going to be talking about this generally today, but in the future, do expect me to be touching on this and how it's going to be impacting the 12 rising signs. In particular, for my New Year's Day video, I am going to be talking about this aspect for each and every one of the 12 rising signs. If you guys want to be a part of that taping, you want to see my 2024 presentation before it's aired on my YouTube channel, check out the link in my description, head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com, pick up a ticket to my live event for 11/11, and you guys can join me and ring in the new year and find out how this will be affecting you. All right, so essentially, a conjunction in astrology is a pretty big thing, right? That's one of the strongest aspects that we see astrologically. We can go back in time, we can look at some of the patterns with the previous conjunctions. I will not be doing that today. I'm just gonna be talking about the future. I'm sure I will do a video where I take you guys through all the different time periods and how it's manifested. I will kind of cherry pick and talk about a couple of things just to give you guys examples today. But in honor of Uranus, I really want to talk about the future, okay? Forget where we've been, let's talk about where we're going. Now, this particular conjunction will be taking place between April 12th and April 26th of 2024. So yeah, I'm a few months early, but everybody seems to be talking about this, and obviously we can see why. When we have a conjunction also, this is something that unfolds over time. So maybe we see some of the effects of it within the time period where the conjunction is taking place. So this will be spring of next year, but we're actually going to see the effects last clear through July of 2024. We will see that this keeps getting reactivated with transits involving like Venus and Mars and Mercury and the Sun. So as we see planets that hit this 21 degrees, it'll kind of bring up little sparkles of this particular conjunction. And in my mind, I think we're going to really start to see the full effects of the seeds that are being planted from this particular conjunction in 2030, when we start to see the Jupiter opposition. So if you guys follow astrology, we know, like with the lunar cycles, we have the new moon, it plants a seed, we see it kind of come to fruition, sometimes 2 weeks later, sometimes it's 6 months later down the road when we see that cycle complete. So when we see the Jupiter square happen, obviously in the sign of Leo, and then when we see the Jupiter opposition happen in 2030, when Jupiter enters into Scorpio, we're really going to start to see the effects of this particular conjunction. So give it some time to see it evolve over time. These are just some of the topics that are going to be coming up over the next 10 years or so. Now, in my mind, I keep thinking about 21, okay? 21 being this Sagittarian number. This is a number that is about growth. This is about foreign countries, places that are abroad, highways, everything that's big or large, right? Because this is a Sagittarian degree. So if you follow degree theory, we know that we're going to see the topics of Jupiter and Uranus, which I'll cover, be highlighted. Maybe it's expressed through the sign of Taurus, which is a Venusian sign, but 21 degrees makes everything pop. And it's going to affect everything from horses and stables. What we're probably going to see some kind of collective growth revolving around maybe horse training, maybe horse riding. I think a lot of people are going to realize that that might be a feasible option in the future if they're opting out of electric cars. Tennis, people who are tall, that might become more so in fashion. Long legs, fashion models, publishing, journaling, film, art, cinema, but also religion, priests, general, colonels, travel agencies, higher education, universities, import, export, and borders. So we're going to see these topics come up very strongly through the lens, right, of Taurus. Now the Sabian symbol, you guys have heard me talk about it time and time again. When we do the Sabian symbols, we round up, so we would actually be reading 22 degrees because this would be 21. So you guys have heard me talk about the white dove flying over troubled waters. Cue the song. I feel like in general, right, this particular Sabian symbol, it just keeps coming up just over and over. We've seen it with eclipses and retrogrades and conjunctions. And really for me, my takeaway is about having harmony in turbulent times, right? Because the dove can be a symbol of peace and purity. It can be about hope and inspiration. Flying over troubled waters suggests the ability to maintain a sense of tranquility and peace, even in the midst of challenging and turbulent situations. So it implies the potential for finding solutions and resolutions that bring about harmony. Collective peace movements may be possible, right? It may very well happen. But I think also a lot of this is going to be about finding ways to calm our nervous system down, to connect to the element of earth, right? Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac. It is ruled by Venus. It's about earthly pleasures and our connection to the planet. So calming the nervous system, right, with Uranus and Taurus, I think is going to be important. And being mindful of the role that food and herbs actually play in our energetic kind of healing, right? Spiritual guidance is a huge theme when we're talking about, you know, this particular Sabian symbol, because doves are associated with spiritual or divine aspects. So in regards to this Sabian symbol, I think it's suggesting that like a higher or a much more spiritual perspective can guide individuals through difficulties. Yes, it will encourage us to seek inner peace and learn how to rely on a sense of higher purpose and guidance, but that will come because there is going to be some navigational challenges that are going to be taking place. So we're kind of learning how to overcome things. Whenever I see difficult transits in somebody's chart or in a natal chart, I'm always really quick to kind of remind the client, like, you're here to overcome your astrological, you know, preconditioned situations. You're here to supersede some of these aspects. You're here to learn from some of these challenges. We've all heard the you know, tough times makes basically like strong men, right? And women. So I think that that's really what we're going to be kind of working through with this particular conjunction. I do feel like it does provide a path forward for resolution and healing because the dove is all about being able to symbolize, it's about symbolizing the possibility of resolving conflicts, finding common ground, and bringing about healing. So it implies that even in difficult times, there's a potential for positive change and restoring the balance. And also, when I think of a dove, I think of a bird, I think of like graceful navigation. So the act of flying over troubled waters suggests a graceful and elevated approach to dealing with problems. It's encouraging us on an individual level to rise above these challenges, to maintain our composure and navigate through these difficult times with grace. So hopefully that's like a little bit more of like a positive spin on this. Obviously, with all aspects in astrology, you're going to see pros and cons. Some things will materialize quite literally, textbook per the astrology, especially I believe with some of these things that are already starting to happen. You know, September of 2023 was when we saw Jupiter and Uranus in the closest proximity before Jupiter started moving away from Uranus. So now we're seeing them start coming back together in the new year. We're going to see Jupiter go direct at the end of December of 2023. Uranus will be going direct as well, and they're just going to be kind of heading towards that finish line in April of 2024. Now, when we talk about who this is going to affect the most, there is a slew of people who are going to get impacted by this. I believe when we see outer planets like this make these really significant aspects, it affects all of us collectively, so nobody gets a pass. I want to remind you guys where we've come from, right? When we think about, 2020, when Jupiter, finally left Capricorn and it came into conjunction with Saturn, it was the dawn of a new era, right? We were seeing that we were moving collective into the future. Jupiter was about optimism and it was about expansiveness. And then Saturn was about that kind of steady hand and keeping us all, like holding us all accountable for that growth and making sure that we're doing it in a way that was sustainable. Anyway, the reason why I bring this up is you're going to see a lot of correlation between what's happened in recent years when we saw Saturn in Aquarius and the squares to Uranus. We saw Saturn that wanted to limit us all in terms of society, and Uranus was saying, no, I want to break free. I want freedom from the markets. I want freedom from the banks. I want freedom from, resources. And we've seen a lot of financial turbulence because of that square. Now in 2024, we're going to see Saturn is now in kind of harmonious aspects, and it's going to start sextiling for a brief period of time Uranus. So we're going to see some steady growth that's happening with Jupiter and Uranus being in this sign, inching towards developments in the future with Taurus related things. And Saturn will be kind of looking over, making sure that it's doing it in a way that is sustainable. Probably not your favorite word, definitely not mine, but I don't mean it in the same way that some of these creepy global groups mean it. I mean in a way where we can continue to grow without feeling like we're doing it too rapidly. The other thing to keep in mind is that we also are going to see Pluto ingress into Aquarius. So Pluto will be coming back into Aquarius. This is important because anytime there's anything going on with Uranus, this conjunction is amplifying the energies of Pluto because Aquarius is, its modern day ruler is Uranus. So even though they're not making an eye-catching aspect to one another, eventually we are going to see, Jupiter trine Pluto. Eventually we're also going to see Uranus trine Pluto. This will be happening over the next year. The Jupiter-Pluto trine will happen. So big innovations, opportunity for wealth. And then we're eventually going to see over the next 2 or 3 years, Uranus in Gemini trine Pluto. It does seem like some of this evolution with technology, with humanity, with the internet, with gadgets, with information, it's inevitable. There's no stopping this train. So you guys have the option to get with the changes and see opportunities to invest and maybe get out of your comfort zone or do things differently to better prepare and also provide for your future. Or if you go in the direction of being stubborn and resistant to change, you're gonna get hit like a Mack truck. So really work with the energies, even though they are going to feel overwhelming and like we're hitting warp speed going into the future. Pluto being in Aquarius, it's going to hit 2 degrees this year. So we're going to see some really significant energies revolving around power. Power structures, power when it comes to leaders, the power of the people, and the effects that power is going to have on money, food, banking, all of these Taurus-related themes. So in the background, it's not just, Jupiter is going to conjunct Uranus, and you're going to hear a lot of astrologers say it's really good for abundance and money and this and that, but it might be for some people. It might materialize as a really good investment. It might materialize as a sudden, lottery win. It may mean that, you have this, this talent or some kind of information that you can utilize and it can be very lucrative. But I feel like it's also going to be about this total shift that's going on in regards to the way that we look at money and values. And when we start to realize that Pluto in Aquarius is about power of the people, that when people decide to use their power in a positive way, they can really have quite an impact when it comes to their purchasing power, relationship with banks. I'm going to keep telling everybody, vote with your money, vote with your dollars. That's the best thing that you can do, whether that means you're shifting into a smaller bank or you're supporting brands or companies that may be more independent. Obviously, Uranus can be about independence and getting out of certain systems financially or with food or consumerism that is actually going to have quite an impact. Something that we've seen in recent years has definitely been themes like the GameStop stuff, where we saw lots of young investors getting together and kind of sticking it to these bigger kind of Wall Street investors. That's a great example of the squares that we've seen between Aquarius and Taurus. Especially because by sign, we see that Pluto is in a superior position. Now, it's not squaring Saturn, it's not squaring, Jupiter. In fact, it's going to harmonize with some of these pretty soon. But it's in a position that is higher than Taurus. So it's higher than the banks. It's higher maybe than also the farmers or, people who are the agriculturalists. So it can go both ways. We can start to see some of these groups or roundtable or think tanks or collective groups like Congress and other people who really can apply power to Taurus related people. So like I said, it goes either way. As for who it's going to affect the most in terms of the signs, in my mind, I'm thinking that this is a really big shift, obviously, on a personal level for Taurus placements. So if you happen to be a sun, moon, or rising in Taurus, you're definitely feeling the impact of this. The likelihood is you've already been feeling it this year. You kind of feel it brewing. That could be Taurus, sun, moon, or rising placements. I'm working with the conjunction of about 3 degrees. So if we look at this, I'm kind of figuring anywhere from around about 18 degrees of Taurus to about 24 degrees of Taurus. Sun, moon, rising, or personal planet. You're going to be really feeling this, but the conjunction itself will be at 21. Now, the other signs that I think of are Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Pisces. Obviously, Sagittarius and Pisces are traditionally ruled by Jupiter. So you guys are going to feel the effects of your chart ruler, right? Jupiter coming into conjunction with Uranus. So that's going to be really big for you personally. You're going to have to look at where Taurus is in your chart. You're going to see this meeting of these two planets, and it's going to bring some kind of opportunity, maybe for sudden luck, maybe for freedom, maybe for innovation. And then finally for Aquarius, because Jupiter will come into conjunction with your modern day ruler, Uranus. And it will be happening in an angular house. So, Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, all of you guys are going to be experiencing this conjunction in an angular house, which means the volume of life is going to kind of turn up a little bit. You're going to feel that crunch of sudden optimal growth and, taking, I think, like leaps and bounds into the future, and maybe taking some chances or taking some risks. And obviously it will square other parts of your chart. So it's going to impact places like your home, your relationships, your career, and you might just see some sudden growth that impacts other places. All right, so when we think of Jupiter, right? Jupiter in traditional astrology and also mythology was seen as the god of all gods. So he was, the person who was kind of presiding over everybody and teaching and showing and kind of leading in a noble way. Jupiter being connected to both Sagittarius and Pisces, I think really is talking about, having extra strength for these particular signs. I think that it's going to be touching on things that are going to be relating to expansion and abundance. Because Jupiter is associated with expansion, growth, and abundance and optimism. It's considered a benefic planet, and it's here to bring good fortune. So even though Uranus is chaotic, right, and it's not comfortable in Taurus because nobody wants to poke the bull, the bull wants to be left alone, it wants to take its time, it wants to be slow, and there's going to be jaw-dropping, shocking, lightning quick situations that are going to kind of upset the bull a little bit. So in the beginning, upsetting the apple cart is going to feel like it's too much too quickly, but it may actually be a good thing because it can get the show on the road to helping us find ways to actually bring in more resources. So try to keep in mind as you're going through the spring of next year, whatever sudden things that are happening, even though it seems really challenging, even though it's uncomfortable, it's really probably a good thing because it's giving us like a swift kick in the ass. Now, philosophy and higher learning is a huge theme with Jupiter transits. So it's linked to higher education, spirituality, and a broader understanding of life. So the focus is going to be on encouraging a quest for knowledge and a positive outlook on life. I also liken the sextile that's happening at the time of the conjunction. We're seeing sextiles to Saturn and Mars and Neptune, kind of some shady energy. When I was thinking about it, I was like, it's kind of like from Finding Nemo. You guys remember Dory, how she's like, just keep swimming, everything's fine. And she would forget where she is. And so I think of like this sextile in Pisces, obviously fish, being like, we're going with the flow, wherever things are going, that's where we're meant to be, that's where we're going. There's a lot of faith aspects with Jupiter. There's a lot of faith aspects with Pisces. And so I feel like there is this shift that's going to happen for all of us on the collective that's like, whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. I'm not going to say I don't have any control, but I have faith that, you know, I am being taken in the right direction. And we're going to see a huge resurgence, I think, of religious practices, of faith, of spirituality, of meditation, cults. You're going to see some cult stuff that's going to come up with this as well. You know, Jupiter, Uranus can be like this mad scientist, and it can also be about criminal activities. So it can go one of two ways. But the reason why I connected this to Dory specifically was kind of feeling like, okay, you know, I just got to keep going. You know, we're just going to keep going in the direction that we need to go. And I have faith that, you know, my intuition, what I'm feeling, what I'm interpreting, what I'm seeing in my meditations, what I'm seeing in my dreams, that's where I am meant to follow. And so that can be positive in a sense of, I think, increased faith, and we're seeing faith in action because Taurus is a physical sign. So we're going to see actual manifestations happening based off of what we are praying for, what we're envisioning, what we're believing in. But equally, we can see that if we don't really know what direction we're going in, or we're unsure, or we're not prepared, or maybe we're kind of tapping into the darker side of Pisces, which can be about self-undoing, drugs, addiction, alcohol, it can have quite the impact on our physical body and also our resources, our values, and our spending habits, our consuming habits. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but just some food for thought on Jupiter. Now, Uranus, on the other hand, for me, I think of like Prometheus. I think of, you know, stealing fire and giving it to man, and like that instinctual rebel drive that Uranus has. For me, he's the god of the future, right? It's about the future. That's why it has connections and associations with Aquarius. So Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. It's connected with what's unconventional and forward thinking. It's about innovation and originality because it's known for its influence on, you know, being original and making sudden changes. It kind of zigzags. It goes all over the place. You don't really know where it's going to go. But it's considered a planet that's meant to bring unexpected events and disruptions of the status quo under the realm, obviously, of Taurus-related topics. And then you throw Jupiter into the mix, it's going to make it bigger. You throw the 21 in there and you go, oh, it's going to be global patterns. I feel like this is going to be linked to all of us being more aware of our individuality, our individual needs, our individual resources. It's about being eccentric and our desire for uniqueness. It's considered a planet that brings unexpected events and disruptions, obviously, but it also can bring technological advancements and progress. So there can be fast forward, you know, movement and progressive in a sense of our mindset. So we can see leaps and bounds happening with a much more positive mindset, rather than falling into the doom and gloom of Pisces of, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, pour me a drink, what's the point, what can we do? That shift in that mindset of, no, we can do something and we need to do something. And that shift is going to come about from some sense of awareness of what we physically possess. Is it goods? Is it faith, right? It really depends on your chart. But when we think of Taurus, Taurus is a Venusian sign, right? It's the second sign of the zodiac, ruled by Venus. The difference between Taurus and Libra is Taurus says, what do I possess? What's mine, right? Versus Libra, who says, well, what can we share? Or what can I do for you? Or how can we help each other? Taurus is like mine. It's naturally a possessive energy. So I feel like we're going to see this affect Taurus-related things. So not just food and money, but affecting art, music, beauty, design, anything in regards to, just anything that's of Venusian quality. Now that means it can affect our relationship to money, to food. It means it can affect our relationship to, our banking institutions. It can be our friendships. I think really the future, what will be the most valuable thing will be community more than anything else. Because you can have a ton of money, but if you're lonely and you don't have support, what good is that money going to do? If you're not working and building a community, if you're not helping feed other people, if you're not building something that is solid and encouraging everybody to have wealth and development. I think Pluto going into Aquarius is doing this as well, but yeah, we're going to see a turn where this fame and fortune lifestyle is kind of shifting, and it's more about what we're building and doing for the masses and bringing other people into this wealth and being able to teach them and share with them that's truly what it means to be wealthy. Recently, I saw somebody say in a comment in the comment section, they were like, what about the Pluto and Leo generation? What are we going to do with this Pluto opposition? And I kind of chuckled to myself, and what kind of came to me was the death of the ego. But I really think there's a connection there. And I'm not saying everybody who has Pluto in Leo is egotistical, so please don't take it that way. But Pluto, when it's in any sign, is going to represent some deep shadow side. And the shadow side of Leo is, I'm the king, I'm the best, I have all the gold, I'm the star. So Pluto going into Aquarius will be the star killer. It will be, we're not going to worship at, the altar of the Kardashians any longer. We're not going to see that there needs to be all this bling bling and all this stuff that really represents Leo, stuff that is about fame and fortune. What we're shifting to is hopefully a return of boy bands or supergroups. I think that could be the positive, that we're going to see powerful groups of people coming together in positive or not so positive ways that can truly influence brands or investments or how much money people are willing to kind of invest into things. So rather than saying, well, I'm going to support that one kind of performer, you might start to see bands come together or separate bands kind of forge new things. I think about in the 70s when we had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, there was awesome music that came together during that time. So we may see similar themes like that. But I also think it's going to have a huge influence on art, obviously digital art. That might be a thing. I know we've kind of seen recently with the kind of the rise, and I'm going to say fall, a little bit of some of this digital art that's been kind of going on. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's slipping my mind, sorry. But we may see that there are some people who are coming forward in that space that are creating amazing works of art that really prove to be valuable and lucrative. And it may not just be some kind of fair weather thing where we're just seeing waves of, okay, people are creating this digital art and then it's worth nothing. I think of what happened with the ape digital stuff, and I think it was Justin Bieber bought something for some insane amount of money, and now it's worth a fraction of that, not even a tenth of what he paid for it. So we see this destabilizing effect, right, where things are valuable and then it's not valuable. And I think really what we're going to be talking about is, well, who deems things to be valuable? When we decide that something's in style, likely it's because somebody wrote about, well, this is the trend for the season, or this is what so-and-so is wearing, or this is what's kind of hip and trending. And I feel like fashion trends are going to be more so influenced by groups and group movements and natural products and things that might be unconventional and different and kind of futuristic. We've seen a little bit of that with the Saturn-Uranus squares. Now, the conjunction in itself, for me, I think the biggest one, and you're going to hear everybody say this, is it's really about financial opportunities and innovation, right? That's bottom line. Because Taurus is connected to material wealth and resources, this conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus is going to bring about financial opportunities, sudden gains, innovative approaches, managing and accumulating wealth. Now, this could involve new technologies, financial systems, or unconventional investments. So linking this back to, obviously, Pluto moving into the sign of Aquarius, Pluto can be about wealth, Pluto can be about crime, it can be about corruption, it can be about death and rebirth. And Pluto will hit 2 degrees this year. So that's really significant because that's a degree that deals with real power. So with Pluto being in Aquarius and that kind of making that connection to Jupiter and Uranus, I'm going to tell you something. It seems a little negative, but the connections to Aquarius and Congress and, various political representatives, you're going to see a lot of people get super, super rich. Okay. I know they've been doing it for a while, but they're going to get rich. Does it mean that we maybe see some movement where we're looking into campaign donations, especially of larger companies or tech companies? Maybe. Does it mean that we see more exploration and deep dives into, who's making what trades when? Was listening to something the other day where somebody was talking about I was listening to Redacted actually, and they were talking about certain trades that were being made prior to the attacks in Israel. Regardless of where you stand on the matter, I'm not getting involved in it because personally nobody wins. But I will say that there was discussion about who was making specific trades prior to the attack in October that seemed to insinuate that somebody knew something was going down. this is the kind of stuff that we see, right? Pluto deals traditionally with corruption, and also it can deal with war because it is connected to Scorpio. And I think that we're going to be talking a lot about, well, why is there such a push for war? Who's making money? Why are the banks so heavily invested in Ukraine? What's the point of this? And why is it that we've got Congress, members and people in Senate and representatives and all kinds of stuff who really didn't have much money, but suddenly are now, exiting their terms, or maybe they've been, there for a number of years, and they're millionaires when they're making a somewhat modest salary annually. Now, I know you guys are shaking your head going, well, obviously lobbyists, but we're going to start to really see that some of these representatives are just basically they're purchased. They're bought and paid for by foreign entities, for companies, tech companies, and are finally starting to be exposed for not necessarily working for the people. So we're going to start to see that kind of get peeled back with Pluto being in this sign. So I have hope that as we start to see more of these really unusual trades, and also the fact that, they're maybe making investments based off of things that they know that are coming, it's going to kind of start to show us where wealth and inequality and, hoarding tendencies, or, just quite frankly, like being super greedy is starting to expose certain people. Okay, so just food for thought on that. Breaking free from tradition. Okay, Taurus is traditional, it is. And when we see Uranus, it's about breaking free from something. Now, I could see two sides of the coin here. Breaking free from established norms, and then that connection to Jupiter. It might be a desire to change traditional values, especially those related to possessions, resources, and stability. We might be finding that we're seeking new and unconventional ways of approaching material security. Yes, sure. But also, I think a lot of it's going to be where we're starting to look at being conservative as something that is like rebellious, because Uranus is the rebel. And so you're going to see a lot more people who are going to have more conservative values. I'm not saying it's good or bad, that's all relative, but you're going to see it. And the effects that has on certain systems. Are people going to be more conservative with their wealth? Are people going to be investing more in security of their wealth? You have to keep in mind that Pluto in Aquarius here is definitely connected to data, okay? And companies are out there paying for it. There's stuff going on right now where credit card companies are being found actually tracking purchases of self-protection, of ammunition. They want to repeal and peel back some of the laws that have been put in place that actually protect some of your privacy with purchases. How do you guys think they're going to move forward with some of these new moves to tax certain foods, or to limit traveling, or whatever? You're hearing a lot of this stuff about the Agenda 2030. That cannot be implemented unless they have a system to be able to see what you're purchasing. That starts with first going through the credit card companies before we start getting into digital IDs and other things that will actually know exactly how much of what you're buying. Anyway, so this might mean that some people start realizing where things are going, and they're going, well, I'm breaking with banks, or I'm returning to cash. Personally, I have a cash is king kind of philosophy. I feel like my goal for next year personally is going to be doing at least shopping certain days out of the month, or whatever, things that I'm buying, hopefully with cash. If I can find providers, or I can find stores that are willing to do that, I will. I know that it's fighting a losing battle saying I'm not going to buy anything online, and I'd be very hypocritical saying that, being somebody who makes my living online. But I can be smarter with where I'm buying. I can choose to be working with people who are independent. I can align myself with brands. I've recently really liked looking at, is it Square? I don't think it's Square. I can't think of what it's called, but it's a platform where it's basically all kinds of companies that align with my values personally. And so I'm trying to do more of that, knowing where I'm buying, products from, and what brands I'm supporting, and when I can be purchasing in cash. Equally, and I said this a year and a half ago when I did my Uranus video, my presentation where I talked about the North Node Uranus conjunction, farmers markets are going to be huge, okay? And I'll get into that with food, but supporting your local businesses, small businesses, ranchers, farmers markets, that kind of stuff is going to be the key if you want to break away from certain systems and you want more freedom. Technological advancements in finance obviously are a given. That's Uranus and Taurus in general, but With Jupiter being there, it's definitely going to provide fast-moving technological advancements in finances, innovations in cryptocurrency, financial technology like fintech, or changes in the way that we handle or value money. Economic and market fluctuations are going to be huge. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. I also don't politic. I just read the stars. But what I will tell you guys is this. We see big things happen when Jupiter makes conjunctions to outer planets. If it's in a sign that deals with money, you're going to see some huge trend that's going to happen. Now, will it be the top of the market? Or are we going to see a big pop? I personally think so. That's the impression that I'm getting, especially looking at the New York Stock Exchange chart. I feel like this is going to be about how new ETFs and other things, probably revolving around Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies that they deem valuable, will impact the market. I believe it's going to come into conjunction with the Mercury for the New York Stock Exchange chart in the 10th house. So we see like all this stuff that's going to be coming through, and obviously boomers are going to want to get involved and get invested in the future of cryptocurrency if they deem things like Bitcoin to be very valuable. And that will have a huge impact on the markets. I think it will also potentially rattle or kind of shake up the way that we look at physical material resources like gold and silver. But there's going to be fluctuation. So we see expansion, and then Uranus introduces volatility and unpredictability. The conjunction in Taurus will coincide with periods of economic growth, but there could also be some unexpected changes in financial markets. Go and look at some cryptocurrency. It's always trading, right? It doesn't have usual hours like the stock market does. So we're going to see, peaks and valleys, but we're going to see things that are going to change dramatically very quickly. We will hear more about, environmental innovations because Taurus is connected to the Earth. The conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus might stimulate innovative approaches to environmental conservation, sustainable practices, and develop new technologies for the benefit of the planet. I'm all about that. I would like to see more of that, but I feel like some of the things that we've already seen, like billionaires telling us we need to chop down trees, or implementing potential carbon taxes, or telling us that we won't have any cars by 2030. My frame of mind is that if these people are telling you that that's what they're going to do, you better believe them. And I'm going to tell you guys something. The astrology does reflect that this is the way forward. And I don't think it's necessarily about saving the planet, as it's finding another way to enslave humanity, finding ways to add more taxes, to make it more challenging, or probably even like less efficient, to be honest with you, because we're going to be relying on some things that aren't necessarily as sustainable as we think. Nevertheless, we will see innovations, we will see new developments, we will see breakthroughs, I think, in food and technology and in resources and planetary things next year, which can be positive for humanity. Shifts in values is guaranteed because that's what Taurus is associated with, and the conjunction will bring shifts in individual and collective values, leading to a greater emphasis on freedom, independence, and progressive ideas. Now, what you want to watch for is obviously expansions. You got to look at the Taurus area of your life. You're going to see sudden changes here, expansion here, and it'll be a period of rapid growth and breakthrough, both personally and collectively. Now, I'm looking forward to the optimism side of things, excitement and optimism, because Jupiter is about being enthusiastic, and the conjunction to Uranus will amplify these qualities. So people are going to feel a heightened sense of excitement and curiosity and a desire for new experiences. I experienced this week. I was watching some video on social media, and it was like, I guess China just recently unveiled a invisibility cloak screen, right? Like it was like almost like watching a magic trick. It was crazy. I saw these couple guys standing on a stage. They were holding a screen, and then they were talking, and you could see him standing behind the screen, and then all of a sudden they switched it on, and then it was like seeing through him, and you saw half of a man. I think of like magic, in the connection of Jupiter and Pisces, which can be about illusions, and where there can be illusions, grand illusions of wealth or grand illusions of stability, but it can also be about affecting the way that we experience the physical dimension. We're going to see opportunities for risk taking, and that can be positive or negative depending on how you play it. Uranus is linked to what's unpredictable and taking risks. And with the conjunction of Jupiter, many may see the opportunity to take bold steps forward, to explore new possibilities, to embrace a much more adventurous life. as a way of actually, you know, like making wealth, creating wealth, and having a new way of life. Intellectual insights, because this is about unconventional thinking and the desire to expand our understanding of the world. Social and technological advances, especially because, you know, I think the connection of Uranus and scientific understanding, although Uranus is not strong in Taurus, you know, in previous cycles, seeing Uranus in Taurus, we've made a lot of bad moves with medicine and health related things. We didn't always make the best decisions, and we had breakthroughs, but that was after learning through a series of being like, well, this didn't necessarily work, so, you know, here's what we found. We saw things, I believe, like antibiotics and other stuff, but now we're starting to see the effects of that, of where we've become too used to just popping that, or maybe we're less likely to respond well to it, and we're seeing illnesses that are resistant to that because it's being pumped into food, guys. Like that's really what it comes down to. Political and social change, we see lots of movements with, I think of like Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus is like, you know, it's going to be like an angry mob. We might see that over the summer, especially if there is such innovations taking place with banking that I think is going to come, that some people are just going to like totally lose their mind when they can't cash a check or walk into a bank and deal with a real teller. You know, when you're in a world where you're using customer service and it's all going to be AI and you're not going to see a real person, and you want to be able to receive something or have a real conversation, people are going to be like, what the hell? Like, I can't physically possess what I want, or I can't have a real interaction with somebody. Now we're starting to see some places people are pushing back. They're pushing back against scanning their own groceries. They're pushing back against, you know, not having this interaction, this real life interaction with people. So I think with Uranus and Taurus, we're going to realize there are certain things that you just can't mimic. You can't mimic nature. You can try, but it's not going to be real. It's not going to have that soul that I think you're looking for. And recently I was watching a video. My husband was talking about how, I guess the Beatles released, right, or what's left of the Beatles, this new Beatles music, this new song. And they took samples from music from John Lennon with tapes that he left to Yoko Ono, and also samples that I think came from some of the other Beatles, and eventually whoever's left, I think it's Ringo and I don't know, I'm gonna say the other one, Ringo and the other one, they put together this new music, and they used new technology so they could kind of like strip it down and just take certain parts of it, and then also they could use AI to finish the music and bring them all together to create this song that was never created. And so I watched the whole bit of it on YouTube. Go and find it. It's really interesting. And then you get to listen to the music. And what was interesting is I was listening to it, and I wasn't even really watching the video, because I mean, I'm sure you could listen to it and you'd be like, yeah, that's the Beatles. But the more that I listened to it, I was like, that's definitely them, and it sounds like them, but it lacks soul. And something clicked for me, and I was like, yes, we're going to see AI that's going to be able to, you know, reprint or 3D print maybe, you know, a classic, you know, sculpture. We're going to see that we can create all of this, you know, symphony music and all of this stuff, and nobody has to physically be there, and it's going to be perfect, and it could be this classical remake of something, but it's going to lack soul. And so I want you guys to think about that as we move into the future. Yes, the future can be bright and we can see new innovations and things, but what you're not going to be able to recreate are things that are natural, right? And we're going to start to see that they're going to be messing with things that are natural. But onto the political and social change, we definitely see this. We see lots of people who are going to be having, you know, I don't like using the word, like I said, the angry mob. We're going to see people who are going to be protesting. We're going to be seeing that people that are going to be coming together, especially on college campuses, because that's what Jupiter is about. Significant social shifts, revolutions, movements that aim for greater freedom and equality and progress, and cultural waves that are taking place right now because of Uranus's connection to groups and networks. And so whether this is cultural waves of music or art or changes in society, it's going to have a huge impact on all of us in terms of our social kind of behavior. All right, so for me, here are my notes that I wanted to kind of get into with you guys. So when I look at this ingress chart of when Jupiter and Uranus come together, there's some interesting things that are happening. First of all, like I said, Pluto is obviously very much connected to Uranus. So when Jupiter and Uranus come together and there is this sudden growth and innovation somehow, it is reflecting this really powerful shift with Pluto. So this can be about, control over money, banks, and resources. This can be about how technology is influencing money. This can be, the things that Congress are saying, potentially, or the Fed is saying, or, groups or panels of people about cryptocurrencies. I think about how this is ruled by Venus. And then the days leading up to 420, haha, hilarious, right? There's definitely gonna be some people who are gonna be buying some cannabis. But the days leading up to this, you're gonna see Mercury involved in a retrograde in conjunction with Venus. This is all 12th house, okay? 12th house to the conjunction. So essentially, there is some reorganizing going on, reassessment going on, Mercury, when it comes to health. And Venus is in her fall in conjunction to Chiron. This is going to be a whole wave, I think, of like health-related lawsuits. I'll just leave it at that. I think you guys get what I'm saying. And people are realizing and recognizing that they may be entitled to some financial compensation because of how information or news is coming out that may make it possible for them to legally find certain companies or governments liable. So I do think that that's part of what's going to happen. But I think about this rearrangement that's going on with Mercury and Venus's conjunction to Chiron, where individuals are going to be realizing, oh my goodness, like, I'm not happy with the state of something, or I need more money, or, I want my resources. And even this conjunction is reflecting what's going on with Mars, Saturn, and Neptune. April, May, June, and July of next year, economically, I do feel like things are going to be very volatile. I think you're going to see high highs and low lows. And for me personally, looking at this retrograde in conjunction to Chiron is where whatever fluctuation that's happening, where there is some sudden growth, it is having an impact on individuals. We're going to see, like I said, Uranus is the dispositor of Pluto entering Aquarius. From April 12th to May 22nd, 2024, Pluto will be at 2 degrees. And this is where you're going to see the most power revolving around groups and technology and other things, and the impact that this has on Taurus. Now, Taurus is not just banks. It can be stocks. It could be bonds. It can also be about expenses. And I think about Pluto's connection to taxes and the taxes that are potentially going to be put on property taxes, how those might be increasing, an increase also in insurance fees, which everybody is seeing and everybody is, noticing, whether it's your car, your health insurance, your life insurance, these things continuing to go up. And when planets hit 2 degrees, there is a supreme power, okay? And so when I think of that, it's a Taurus degree, supreme power of what? Regeneration, change, transformation, okay? Through who? Groups of people, and what they're having to say about what we have to spend, what we can possess, and potentially people starting to realize that we need more options when it comes to food, resources, land, things that bring us security, right? That's what Taurus is all about. But with Pluto in Aquarius, for me, this is about political power, control, corruption. Pluto is connected to Jupiter and Uranus, which is really, I think, connected to the wealth of banks, global banks, 21. And for me, because Uranus has also a connection with criminals, it's about what's considered to be criminalized. What will be criminalized in the future? Will it be cash? Are we moving towards a cash-free society? We've heard that. I mean, the pandemic ushered that in for sure. Cash is dirty, don't touch cash, right? So are we going to see more of a move to that? Certain countries are now having a limit in how much you can withdraw, how much you can exchange, rules and regulations revolving around cash transactions. We've all heard about the fun one in the United States, the $600 with Venmo and PayPal. So, when I think of people's personal resources, it's like, man, like, what if you want to tip your babysitter? What if you want to tip your hairdresser? How much are they getting involved in, your personal transactions, and how much information do they have about your buying and spending power? I think about what may be considered criminals, like homesteading, self-sufficient people. In recent years, these attacks on the Amish and going in and trying to, tell them what they can and cannot be doing in regards to raising food, their agricultural practice with animals. Say what you want, but they're doing something right if they have managed to kind of make way without using modern day stuff like the internet, electricity, what have you, self-sustainable, making their own products, creating furniture, selling things. They don't use V's with their children, and so they see some of the lowest autism rates amongst anywhere else in the United States. I mean, you got to put 2 and 2 together, guys, here. They're going to start to look at people who are self-sustainable as people who are threats. People who are conservative as people who are threats. We're seeing this recently. The apparently FBI and Department of Justice are talking about going and following anybody or creating a paper trail of anybody who was liking or reposting anything on Twitter from President Trump in recent years. That's a prime example where we have people who are spying Pluto, looking in on, people's conservative beliefs and following people and what they are saying, what they are doing, and who they are donating money to. Grassroots campaigns are going to be huge over the next couple of years in regards to politicians and who comes up. But I also feel like there's going to be some really significant change when it comes to leadership and people stepping down because of their investments in finances and their dealings. But also if we start to see that there's major political unrest, the effect that that's going to have on the economy. Some of you are like, yes, it's already happening. I think about how, cash might be removed, but I also think about other things that are Taurus related. Dairy, cows, trees, right? I was listening to an article yesterday that was saying that they're putting out word now. You're going to start to see it through some of like the articles and stuff online. Oh, these are the things that we're going to run out of that you should pick up, that you may not be seeing as much in the grocery store in 2024. And I'm like reading through this list being like, okay, what, is it going to be another toilet paper situation? And I was shocked because I was like, why is this being put out right now into circulation on the internet? And the things that were on the list were like dairy, beef, fruits and vegetables, grains, eggs. And I'm thinking, what are all these things? These are whole foods. These are natural foods. Can you affect eggs, whether they're organic or not organic? Sure. Same with beef, same with, produce. But these are things that are whole foods. These are not foods that have been mostly bastardized and processed and put in boxes and filled with sugar or like bug proteins. So if they're starting to say, hey, there's going to be less likelihood of being able to get some of these products, what does that leave us other than things that might be artificially grown or lab-grown meat or, processed foods or, new complex plant proteins? And so I feel like it is going to have some kind of an effect on what is being, removed, what is being, taken away from the masses, because a lot of what Uranus is about, it's about breaking free from something. So we're going to see collective patterns where people are going to be told, well, there's going to be less of these things. And if you want this, then you're going to pay more for it. So dairy, cows, and trees, is it going to cost more to have elaborate landscaping? Are we going to start seeing where, the taxes on land is going to be really impacting whether or not people are actually buying more of it? Is it going to be disincentivizing people from being able to have homesteads? Definitely expect there to be complaints about taxation because of the connection to Pluto. But this had me thinking, who are the real criminals here? Who are the real criminals? You have people in France right now, they're spraying manure all over the government because they're protesting some of these continual attacks on agriculture and farming in Europe. Okay, and that will continue, and that's very Pluto and Aquarius. It's like, here's some shit for you because of what you're telling me to do. And so I do feel like we're going to see this continuation of people who are conservative or people who are self-sufficient or people who are involved in agriculture. But also this could be butchers, right? This could be people who are running farmers markets. This could be people who are trying to organize new community banks that may be seen as the criminals. But I don't think they're the real criminals. I think it's the central bank. I think it's the politicians. I think it's the people who are basically selling out this country and probably others to this global agenda to ensure that they are completely eradicating things like consumerism, obesity, ruining the environment. They're selling this all to you in a packaged way that's like, it'll be efficient, it'll be clean, it'll be this, it'll be that. But what you're not going to hear is that it's actually going to be less efficient. It's going to cost more. Some of these things may be more detrimental to the environment, but you're going to get taxed on it and told that you have to do it anyway. And so, I don't know, I don't necessarily, I do not personally agree with a lot of these things. You're going to have to do your own research. But you'll see that increased prices for food and price hikes are likely going to continue. And I think it's also going to be a reflection of inflation. Since we had the North Node and Jupiter and Uranus that were all kind of in the same sign in recent years, we have seen a significant increase for electricity, right? That's Uranus. For food. We've also seen some stuff that's been going on with gas in certain places. But we've also heard about price gouging and how eggs were in shortage of supply. And, come to find out they were shipping millions of eggs to China and, telling the United States that we're having shortages. And some people were paying, $8, $9, $10 for a dozen eggs. Like, what? Artificial manipulated things is very much Jupiter Uranus. And so whether that is the stock market, whether that is inflation numbers, whether that is food shortages, make no mistake that there are powers in the world right now that seem to want to create crisis to sell you a solution. So the way to opt out of that is to become more self-sufficient. If you've become comfortable with just, having your food delivered and not thinking anything of it about what you're eating or what it costs, you can continue down that path, especially people who live in urban areas. That's how they live. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but if you start to kind of put two and two together and realize that it may not be the healthiest option, it may not be actually the most financially acceptable thing to do. Some people's pocketbooks are going to really be hurting. You can turn to being more self-sufficient. You can turn to finding ways to be more involved in knowing where your food comes from, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a health standpoint. I think that's going to be a big key. I was listening to little excerpts of the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan and the group of astrologers that he has on there. And they were making notes of like all of the different foods that have kind of come up during some of these cycles. And I didn't know that M&Ms and Cheerios, the cereal, were both around similar Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions. I guess Cheerios was like a huge product, I guess, correlating and connecting to, wartime, but M&Ms as well, being these hard candy shells, right, that, don't melt in your hand, they melt in your mouth. But innovations in food are definitely something that we're going to see. I do feel like because this is the conjunction chart that I will keep coming back to, I look at, well, are these innovations actually good for us, right? Is it actually healthy? We've got the moon at 29 degrees of Virgo when this happens. We're going to see the ingress into Libra, but 29 can talk about issues with diabetes. It can talk about issues with digestion. It can talk about issues connecting to our heart. And obviously Virgo is very much focused on health, but at the time, Mercury will be retrograde in conjunction to Venus. So it's saying we're reassessing what it means to be healthy. Are some of these reorganizations of food and, supplements or health or whatever, is it actually healthy for us or is it causing more problems? I don't know. I'm not a fan of that moon in opposition to Neptune. But yeah, I think we're going to see some new food innovations. Me personally, something I'm really interested in, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of this in the next year, is how can I preserve food? Am I freeze drying things? Am I able to can things? Do I feel like I have adequate food preparation in the off chance that, something comes up and, there is a, God forbid, grid down situation. But I think, people who are more involved and they know how to store food, preserve food the right way, and they're maybe doing it with groups of people. I think of people who might live in more rural areas who are like, we have X amount of pounds of rice. Okay, cool. We have beans. We've got tons of, jerky that's in the dryer. I've got a food preserver. So-and-so down the street knows how to can. And people might actually start gardening and preserving and doing that. So it's like they're actually working together rather than feeling like they have to be a slave to the system where if shit hits the fan, they can't go to the grocery store, so they're going to have to accept whatever is being given to them. And I don't think that this is just about food. I also think that this is about water as well, because this conjunction that's happening with Saturn and Neptune at the time does talk a lot about what might potentially be impacting water, and where limitations in water is probably going to be something that is going to be impacting farmers. You know, we're definitely going to see opportunities for vertical farming. I think that's going to start happening because, you know, Uranus is the air. But yeah, look for innovations in food. You know, at the end of May, we're going to see a pretty significant conjunction. We're going to see Jupiter and Uranus coming into conjunction. Jupiter and Venus coming into conjunction. So Taurus season is like nuts. End of April, we've got, you know, Venus, the Sun, Uranus, Jupiter. And so the beginning of May, all these planets start coming together. And when we see the Sun re-trigger this degree, so that'll be 21 on May 11th, it's going to bring up themes of the conjunction. When we see Venus trigger this degree on the 16th of May, re-triggering this conjunction. But I'm looking at when Venus comes into conjunction with Jupiter, which I've talked about a couple times. This is where I think we're going to see like the top, right? We're going to see like, you know, like, oh my God, the market's like ripping or something's positive or whatever. And I keep looking at the transits in multiple charts where I feel like basically after May, June, July, August, like I'm going to tell you guys, be very careful with trades and exchange, because I feel like it's almost being falsely manipulated. So it's being pumped before we actually see something dump. But this might be the most. And so I really feel like, you know, when we look at the Great Depression, there were some people who made investments post that period where the market crashed, that started businesses or invested in things or, you know, got things going again. And then like more millionaires were made during that period than like any other time. So there is a way to make lemonade. If you guys know the future kind of, you know, market stuff and like what's potentially going to be very valuable, you can make those investments when the market dips, or you can invest in it, you know, in the spring. I do think some things are going to be way overbought, and may potentially be something where it's just like crazy to get in on that, because you're going to want to let some of these things cool down. Obviously technology with Uranus being there, but the involvement and how it's actually impacting or affecting food, money, resources, electricity. And so I am predicting that there is another massive wealth transfer that's about to take place. Personally, in my mind, I'm seeing it more in a sense of like all of these price increases are going up. People can't afford a cost of living. We're going to see people start selling houses. We're going to see businesses go under. We're going to see all of these big companies like BlackRock and all of the others, State Street, come in. They're going to start buying stuff. They're going to start just swallowing everything up, whether it's going to be the banks that are eating the little banks or people who are going to be picking up all these residential and commercial spaces, because, you know, people aren't going to be able to afford it. And so we're going to see an even bigger wealth transfer, I think, than what we've seen before, where everything is now going to be going to some of these larger kind of companies. So watch for that. And I feel like the transfer is going to happen, and it's going to be happening because there's an impending crash. I mean, that's just my thought on this. Just after this conjunction, Jupiter will go into Gemini. And when Jupiter goes into Gemini, it's in its fall. You can go back in time and look at the cycles when Jupiter's been in Gemini. We've had massive unemployment, high unemployment rates. And next year, we will also see Jupiter and Saturn square. So we're going to start to really see the effects of, well, actually, the job numbers aren't growing, and people are getting laid off and they're not getting rehired, or people are not having full-time jobs, they're having part-time jobs, that kind of stuff. We're going to actually feel like we're not as optimistic about the growth in Q3, Q4 of 2024. I think about how Taurus is about wallets and what we own or possess, and the Jupiter trend is going to be digital wallets. We're going to be hearing more about digital wallets, and whether that's to hold your cryptocurrency or that banks are going to start issuing digital wallets and people are going to freak out and be like, what does that mean? How does that work? And that does correlate, I think, to you know, removing or eradicating. You know, Uranus can do that. Bank tellers, and we're going to start to kind of realize, I don't know if you guys have seen this locally in your neighborhoods or where you live, but like banks are closing. You know, we're not seeing as many branches as we've seen before. And so I think we're going to start to kind of realize, well, why is that happening? And is there going to be less human interaction? And are we going to be dealing more with things that are going to be digital? And are we going to be dealing more with digital wallets rather than having physical resources or physical cash? But Taurus is also what we stash, what we grow, and what we possess. And so I think of things that are going to be valuable. I think of seed saving, right? Seed vaults. Or if you're somebody who grows stuff and you want to save that, you can. I think about flowers and things that are going to be, very valuable, like jewelry and other materials and like metals. And we might find that there are some unusual trends with certain flowers or certain seeds or certain types of jewelry or things that are very valuable. So you have to go and look into like what Taurus is connected to. Just generally, Taurus is going to be connected to copper. But copper can be in a lot of things, right? And I also think about over the next couple of years, we will see Jupiter go into Cancer. So silver, I think, is also going to be something that will be valuable. I believe right now, some of the things, the rallies that we're seeing with some of the metals and stuff, I'm not as optimistic. I think a lot of people are anticipating that some of the interest rates are going to come down. So we're seeing some increased values in gold and other metals and Bitcoin. But I'm not convinced yet, because I feel like it's doing that because people actually, believe that things are going to get easier next year, and I'm not as optimistic. But yeah, banking in general because of Taurus. So we're going to probably see more crypto banks pop up. We're going to see more opportunities where you can, by putting money into crypto or putting money into accounts, there's going to be higher interest rates, crypto exchanges, and money moving at the speed of light, right? Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus, especially globally. Now, we look at things that are like archaic, like wire transfers and Western Union and the costs and the amount and the fact that banks hold your money for longer periods of time because they're making interest off of it. Well, things like, Bitcoin pretty much take that power away from the banks. You can have an immediate transfer. You can send it from one place to another in a matter of like minutes. And it's working off of like a global network. And so I think about how this might impact the way that we look at transferring money or utilizing money. I do think that we're going to start seeing people investing in other countries and other markets. We look at some stuff that's going on with Argentina and other countries that are very pro-Bitcoin, and potentially people investing in some of these developments or buying land in some of these places, and it may be very lucrative if that does end up being more so economically free kind of environments in the future. But I do believe there's no stopping an incoming global currency, and that really is going to be the move, because we are going to see with this conjunction, there is also going to be a sextile to Saturn and Neptune, and so you're going to hear, well, there's viruses, or there's issues, or there's travel limitations, or people are sick, and we don't want to exchange things, and so we have to move, to this digital currency. In order to do that, you have to have a wallet, so get your wallet. Not a fan, personally. I will have to go kicking and screaming. That's just me. But I do believe that some people who decide to leave the system will probably be people who will be trailblazers for people who want to be a part of separate and freer societies where they want to have less overreach and they want to maintain privacy. So I think that from this kind of rattling situation, you're going to see some people who are going to be like, see you later, and they're going to go and build their own systems in their own communities, or maybe even their own trading platforms or online banking platforms. The last time that we saw Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, and once again, I got this off the Astrology podcast, so it was really fascinating listening to it. You guys should go and listen to their bit on it. They were talking about how, granted Saturn was there, they saw the implementation of the 40-hour work week, which is obviously Taurus's productivity. Uranus can be about union stuff, Jupiter can be money, and also implementing like overtime pay, that if anything you work over that, you get your overtime pay. Saturn, I think, was more the time aspect, but this got me thinking more about like surrounding laws for workers and specifically unions and people who are artists or in creative unions or people who are involved in farming. But likely we're going to see some kind of move, a continuation of movement with the labor movements. But I also think about how this can be about leisure. Jupiter and Uranus can be about having more time for spontaneous fun. And so say what you guys want about AI and how technological advancements and how it could be taking over the world. I believe that for the most part. But I also look at this and I go, well, is there a future where we could do our work faster, where AI could be, implemented to help us, be more productive or make money more independently, giving us the time to be able to do more of what we want? Are we having a robot, do all of our lawn keeping, or do we have new innovations in beauty so we're not spending as much time getting ready? Other things that could give us more time to do leisurely things. Could it be overindulgence? Yeah, we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be wanting to overindulge. And I think the sextiles to Saturn and Neptune are particularly telling. You know, as of this week, as I film this video, there's a whole movement right now where WEF is pushing for certain countries to legalize alcohol. Places like the Middle East and other countries that do not want to legalize alcohol, they're pushing for that. And I do feel like there is going to be this push to want people to consume things. Now, for me, that's enough for me to get spooked and be like, I don't know if I should be drinking wine. But it also gets me thinking about how we could see where things are being put in food or being put in alcohol that can be having an influence on all of us and kind of keeping us sedated. So we just stay in the state of not really realizing or recognizing what's going on, or maybe aren't, questioning what direction things are going in economically, and we just continue to kind of spend and consume. Obviously, it reminds us of the days of Rome when Rome was falling. They were giving everybody, who were watching the gladiators and everything, wine and beer and bread, and just, keep them intoxicated, keep them fed, keep them entertained, while everything kind of goes, to hell in a handbasket. And so I see some similar themes here where it's like, what you really want to be focusing on is being in your body, okay? And being aware of where what's in food can impact your body, what you're consuming, what you're buying can impact your body. And I think that there is going to be a global move, I think, to have some kind of influence over food, but also I think it could be alcohol. Personally, that's just me. Jupiter, after all, is the traditional ruler of Pisces. So when we look at that conjunction, there is going to be a move to have some kind of an influence on medical stuff, medications. I mean, we live in a world right now where so many people are on mental health, medications, and they have prescriptions for SSRIs and other things. What happens if we have shortages? You have people talk to their doctor about that, because if you suddenly don't have your medication, or if you suddenly are going through a period where there is an influx, where we're seeing a lot of media and other things that's promoting drinking and other stuff, and it becomes more socially acceptable to just consume, drink, oh, you can't deal with things, have another glass, that combination that it's going to have an effect on, your mental body, but your physical body is probably not a good one. So I want you guys to think about that, because I'm also noticing that it's just like this cultural thing that's like, I don't know. Redacted was talking about that the other week, and I was like, yeah, you see a lot of people, a lot of moms and other people who are like, oh, just, pour me a drink. That's how I deal with life. But I think it's going to have some kind of effect in combination with pharmaceuticals. So I don't know. I think that many people who are very much reliant on that medication, and they need that in order to feel like they can survive, know that there can be imbalances or effects that can happen where you can be imbalanced if you are consuming other things. I don't know. Hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see. The other thing is, I think about astrology. I mean, I should have made that first, right? But I wanted to get to the real important things. Astrology. Some of my favorite astrologers have Jupiter-Uranus aspects, both trine and also in the conjunction. We've seen a lot of them come through 1983, who had that in Sagittarius. We had one that was in Pisces as well. I think that was not too long ago. But this conjunction is going to be about the growth and I think the building of astrology as a practice, wealth with astrology, money management in astrology, investment in trading strategies with astrology and a fusion of education, and also learning more about health and wellness, and also food, or using natural remedies, which we can't really talk about, but I'll just leave it at that. And where there is some kind of connection and correlation between what we're learning with astrology and maybe being able to diagnose or treat in working with certain remedies, but also the money of astrology. I mean, you're going to see a lot of astrologers that are really going to start to kind of blow up. And I also think part of that is Pluto in Aquarius. I do think that major tech companies and stuff, they're aware of how popular this is. They're seeing the kind of views astrologers are getting. They're going and they're hitting us up all the time. I probably get 12 emails a day from people sending me stuff from companies being like, hi, we see your watch time. Can you sell a product for us? We'll pay you, $1,000 if you just put this little ad in before your video. And I have been very anti that, okay? Unless there is a tarot deck that I pick up that I like, unless there is like a product that I personally have used, I'm not gonna sell you guys stuff. You get enough of that with my YouTube ads. But I do think that you're gonna see a lot of influence of buy, you know, use this product, do this, do that, and like people who are gonna be kind of getting into that particular market. And like, hey, there's something to be said about it. I joked around with my husband, you know, his background was in developing like YouTubers and stuff. And when we first started talking about creating my channel, I kept saying, you know, like people are going to watch it. And he's like, nobody's going to watch an hour-and-a-half video, Candace. He's like, you're insane. And I was like, no, people will watch it. These are different people. I was like, you don't understand. Astrology people are weird people, right? We're Uranian. I myself will clean the whole house and listen to a 3-hour video, or I will listen to a whole presentation, or I'll take part of a lecture or a course while I'm running errands. I'm in the car. I'm always listening to it. That's all that I do. If it's not research for this stuff, I'm listening to what other people are saying, because I recognize that there's so many other voices that are going to be contributing over this next year to where we're going. Hopefully we're going to see more astrology panels. I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting because the growth of my channel has come from not just views, but it's come from watch time, and the fact that people will sit here and watch these videos, which is like insane. So thank you guys for watching it. But we're going to see probably that there's going to be more ads and stuff that are paying for it. Granted, you know, with that comes the dangling of the carrot. There are certain things that we can and cannot talk about. There's no doubt YouTube wants you to be entertained. Okay. And YouTube is a wonderful thing. You can learn how to fix a car. You can learn how to can something, you can learn a language. There's a million how-to things. I feel like YouTube in a way could be a university in itself if you're watching the right videos. But YouTube wants you to be entertained. And so I think about where, you know, as a content creator, walking the line and being like, I can't really talk about astrology without talking about what's going on in the world. Otherwise, I'm going to become a cookie cutter astrologer who's just going to regurgitate horoscopes and tell you guys that your twin flame is coming back. And like, that's not me. So I'm going to continue to keep telling you guys, because this is an ever-changing field. Go and follow me on X. Go and follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. We'll feature it or something, but please go and follow me there, because I know that we're going to continue to see developments in media. We're going to see that as Jupiter goes into Gemini, and we're going to start to see more diversity in that field. But for whatever reason, you know, if you guys I'm not going to say if you don't see me, but if you can't get in touch with me, another way probably to kind of stay in touch with me is go to my website, join my newsletter. I only send stuff out when I'm doing new courses or lectures or new products. So I won't spam you, but we have like over 1,000 people right now on the email list, which is awesome. So that way I can stay in touch with you in the future. Okay, so what do I see? Well, I mean, you know, the conjunction is a seated moment. And in 6 years' time, we're going to experience this opposition when Jupiter is in the sign of Scorpio. So if Taurus is what you buy, right? It's what you invest in, what you hold, what you purchase. Scorpio can represent what is wanted, what is needed. It can represent wealth because of its connection to Pluto. So I see this as a time where investments that are made now into new future technologies or innovations, things that you buy, things that you learn, are going to be very valuable in about 6 years' time. So here's the positive, is that in 2030, when we see this transit, the optimism grows. Suddenly we see an opportunity for wealth and also being prepared to survive. Scorpio. So preppers, get ready. This is like your Super Bowl. This is your moment, right? But the negative is, and it's just the irony of Agenda 2030. Like somebody said in a comment recently, they were like, I'm glad that you're using your time to like help the masses and like give your information to like the little people, and you're not helping the evil, you know, overlords that are trying to ruin the world. I want to know who's doing the astrology for like the World Economic Forum. I want to know who's working for Klaus Schwab, because, you know, in recent years, I've seen some really stupid shit, but I actually feel like they are using astrology for Agenda 2030. Here's why. 6 years, excuse me, from this conjunction, we will see Jupiter in the sign of Scorpio, where it's magnifying and bringing up things relating to death, loss, grief, but also wealth. And it will be making an opposition to Saturn in Taurus, okay? And it will be also, before it makes that opposition, form a square to Pluto. So Pluto will be kind of the focal point of a square, It will represent major change and transformation of people who are pushing back against major shifts in regards to food, limitations in food, rationing, land, possessions. And Jupiter in Scorpio is going to be people who are prepared. People who already saw the writing on the wall are going to be the people who are going to be living life high on the hog, pun intended. So make investments wisely. And I don't just mean the stock market. I mean, what do you know how to do? Can you build a house? Do you know how to plant a garden? Can you knit something? Can you, create something from scratch? Do you know how to fix gadgets? What investments are you making in technology? What are you learning in terms of sustainability for yourself? I think of like not just solar, but also like how you're learning how to manage and take care of, your garden. Are you harvesting rain? What are you doing to be more self-sufficient, right? I think about how Saturn and Taurus will limit money, cash, property, and goods. That's a guaranteed, especially because we're going to have Chiron there as well. So that will happen. I think about how the opposition will be taking place. And this is going to be basically, setting us up for realizing that those who have been prepared are going to be a lot better off than people who weren't prepared or who didn't invest or who weren't ready. And that significant shift in society is going to be so much harder for them to feel like they are potentially being cut off. Now, when you've heard things about Agenda 2030, right, you'll own nothing and be happy. I think about there is a need right now to get food and energy in order. And not in a profitable, controlling way, because that's how some of this Pluto and Aquarius stuff is materializing, but in a way where we're actually looking out for humanity, finding global solutions for life, energy, food, materials, etc. Wealth will be developed for all. That's really what this is about, is how we can create wealth for everybody, how we can feed everybody, how we can include everybody. And what will be considered powerful will be powerful groups of people, community, friends, and people you can trust. Not this whole everybody's out for their own, the more that you have for yourself, the better. Who cares about other people? Because we will get to a point where it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have community, you're screwed. So what we need to be investing in is friendships, is alliances, is networks. We need to be building that with Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, because that may be very lucrative in the future. I think about how, this will manifest as new societies of people working together who will overcome issues with hunger, land grabs, and insane taxation. Now, at the time, the South Node will be conjunct Uranus and Gemini. This is where we're going to be seeing probably where these technological things, these smart cities, all this stuff, people are like realizing like, oh my God, this was a nightmare, get us out, we don't want this. And at that point in time, some people are already going to have their resources, their money, their land, their homes kind of fully invested in living in these cities. But I believe personally that the South Node in Gemini is going to materialize as a mass exodus from cities. And people are going to be like, oh shit, we do not want this. We do not want to not be able to have a car. We do not want to be monitored or surveilled. We do not want to be in a position where we're being told if we don't pass a credit score, then we're not going to be able to buy food. People are going to want to leave. And so I believe that now is the time, if you're hearing these things out in the world from these various sources, that this is their goal. And I genuinely believe that they will fail because it goes against natural law, right? It goes against natural law. Everything that they're trying to do, it goes against it. Eventually it will fail. And I do believe 2030 on, the future gets brighter, but we've got another couple of years here where we really are going to be kind of going through it. And to get ahead of the curve, self-sustainability is the key. And I don't mean in a sense of how they mean it. I mean how you can live a more sustainable life and become more self-sufficient. I think that this will provide opportunities for loans. I think on one hand, we're going to see like more group lending situations. But I think on the other hand, we're also going to hear more about how loans and credit offers are seeming more like alluring, where we might start to see things drop and people are like, yeah, come in, get the loans, do this, do that, like right before the system kind of goes under. And I personally believe, this is my belief, that people will be enticed by some sort of universal basic income for supplementing cost of living, and it may be digital. I think a lot of this is also how just robots and technology are taking over jobs, and people who used to have entry-level positions, now they can't because they're being replaced by AI or a robot that isn't going to have to maintain, you know, a 40-hour work week. You know, employers aren't going to have to pay them overtime. They're not going to, it's not a real person. So it's going to be easier to just, you know, create this situation where they can have businesses that are self-sufficient and they don't need to have as many employees. So we're going to have less people who have jobs. So we're going to have more unemployment. So we're going to have more issues economically. So people may be enticed by some sort of UBC, a basic income, a cost of living, but they might be said, you know, we'll give you $2,000, you know, or whatever. You have to, you'll receive it in a digital coin. You have to have a wallet, connect your wallet. I will say this, personally, no matter how dire things get, I think you're better off seeking group funding, sharing funds, pooling your resources, buying a farm, because I firmly believe that what is being offered will come at a price. I'm not a religious person, but I wholeheartedly think this is the mark of the beast. I think that it may be your freedom in some fashion that you are giving up for this particular currency or this support. And it may only last for so long. There's no guarantee that it's going to be something that you're going to have forever, because we're going to see that more money is still being created, even though it's a new system. And it might be manipulated or controlled. It can be turned on or off. Similar to what we're hearing about cars with kill switches. You know, California is passing laws that after 2026, digital cars are going to have this. Why? Why is there a push for control in terms of where you're going or what you're doing, what you're consuming, what you're spending? Pluto in Aquarius is about digital surveillance, and you have to read the fine print. Watch for new energy that's going to emerge. I think Uranus and Taurus might be about some new breakthrough in technology and new energies that are coming. Could it be surging energy prices? Can people find solutions to problems with this? Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Electricity is Uranus. And it might be something that is going to be better for humanity, but at what cost? You know, I mean, I call me crazy, but for some time I've thought about energy harvesting. I guess I can only kind of connect it to, like, you know, the movie Monsters, Inc. I think that movie is very telling, by the way, if you really look at the symbolism behind that, or The Matrix. In Monsters, Inc., you see all these little kids that are getting scared by monsters, and they're working at this like power plant where the kids are screaming, and then they realize they get scared, and then they're harvesting that energy, and that powers the whole city. That's kind of how I see like fear or anger or resentment or agitation, or, you know, anything that's being kind of stirred up right now, because it's an energy. It creates an energy. But then in the movie, you realize that, you know, there were tactics and things that they were using to be able to scare kids that they were taking so much more out of. And then they ended up finding out that if you make them laugh, that's a higher frequency, that it produces more energy. Okay, so everything is energy, basically. So when I look at this, I'm like, wow, is it going to be people realizing that they physically have some kind of control over these energies? And yes, people are like, you know, screaming and hooting and hollering about 5G towers and frequencies and chemtrails and, you know, the effects that it has on all of us, and biofrequency and energy weapons. Yes, sure. Yeah, that's Jupiter, Uranus, of course. But the question is how much of this are we going to allow to affect us? When do we take responsibility for our own energy? Where do we make shifts in regards to our own emotions and our own feelings? When do we start kind of looking at it as we can actually have an energetic shift as well? And when we start to look at it in that way, and we're kind of doing this collectively, we can start to override this. We can literally shift, and we can make leaps and bounds in regards to whether or not we're going to allow this to affect our world. You know, Dolores Cannon talked a lot about this like second Earth theory, that eventually we will just kind of shift and like make this shift into this new dimension. And I do think there are some people with Pluto and Aquarius who, you know, are very strongly tied to the World Economic Forum, that believe that the future is not going to be human, that the future is not going to be spiritual, that we will worship computers and robots and all of these things. But I feel personally that what she was seeing is that we were all getting ready to make this leap in consciousness and going to this new space where we were all going to start to really realize and recognize that we were impacting one another. And when we made that shift, we were able to overcome some of the previous life blockages that we've had, some of the reasons why we keep reincarnating and coming here on Earth. So I think it's also an opportunity, you know, for new energy emerging spiritually, where people are going to have downloads, and they're going to be so much more open, and I think more willing to kind of practice faith in a physical sense, and really applying that to their beliefs and their daily routines. New transportation will come for sure, especially as we start to see Jupiter go into Gemini after this conjunction and trine Pluto. Obviously, this will be in air elements, and there's been talk about like flying cars and whether or not flying cars are going to be, a thing. I do think that that's interesting because Jupiter-Uranus can be about eradicating things involving freeways or highways or things that are large. I live in Texas, and I feel like where I live, it's a constant state of just like chaos with all these freeways that lead to nowhere that are being built, but then there's nobody that's actually working on them. Anyway, so could it be that there is this eradication and removal of being like, well, in the future, we won't need this because we're going to have flying cars. We're going to be in the air, right? Uranus. But space exploration, innovation, and traveling places very quickly. Uranus is connected to the sky. As we have this conjunction, we have a ton of planets that are going to be in Aries. So we're going to hear more about innovations in technology in getting to Mars, becoming a multi-planetary species. We're going to see Mars in conjunction to Saturn and Neptune. So it's also going to be about the depths of the ocean and how the ocean is impacting our physical land masses. Cost of travel will increase, obviously, right? Prices, and this deals with flying. This could also be taxes revolving around, well, if you want to fly places, there's going to be carbon taxes or things are being tracked. And Jupiter-Uranus, I think, will be about innovations in not just travel, but citizenship, visas and citizenships that you can pay for, that you can invest in. I think it's like, I want to say it was, I don't know, somewhere in South America, my husband was telling me about, three Bitcoins, I think it's El Salvador, 3 Bitcoins and you can buy your citizenship. And Bitcoin right now is somewhere around 41, 42, always fluctuating. But that's interesting when you think about, well, if that could be bought now, what could that potential be worth down the road? Do some countries see the incentive of saying, if you don't like where you're living, come here, invest in our country, buy land here. And how that may potentially, give us the opportunity to see that some people might be suddenly moving. But laws revolving around immigration as well, where people can go and redistribution of certain ethnic groups. Lab-grown foods, obviously, animal cloning. I'm not a fan of this personally because I think that we're already starting to see stuff where there's certain food packages that can be bioengineered. That doesn't always say that. Some condiments say that, but chicken and other things that are grown in labs, it might look like chicken, but is it actually chicken? Is it natural? This is where I talk about science trying to imitate stuff that's artificial. Recently I saw, what's in my notes here? Recently I saw, I think it was Tyson Foods, developing a relationship with some company. I can't remember the name. I want to say it was like Protex or something. Saying that they're not merging, but they're collaborating, trying to create more sustainable foods for the future. I don't know about you, but I have been going and doing my research about these new bug proteins. And I've come to the conclusion that because 90% of the things that you see on labels of things that are boxed or processed, you can't pronounce it, let alone know what it is. But there are certain bug proteins that are being placed in foods now that are meant to be supplementary, and they're saying it's more sustainable and it's friendlier for the planet. But a lot of humans are allergic to some of these bug proteins, okay? It's known. You can be allergic to, I think, to like the shells of certain insects and bugs. It can create inflammation and allergic reactions. Also, humans aren't meant to survive on bugs, okay? We're not meant to do that. Even if you're a vegan or if you're a vegetarian or whatever, you're not meant to survive on bugs. And so when we start to see issues with food that's being processed that might be innovative and new, and there might be a lot of money to be made in it, the question is it, once again, is it healthy for you, right? Are you supposed to be surviving on that? There's something to be said about the fact that we can be better with our consuming tendencies. We buy too much, we eat too much, our portion sizes are huge, we're eating food that's not healthy, we're not eating like our ancestors did. You look at people in the 40s and the 50s and the sizes of them compared to people now, obviously, like, I think it's safe to say, from a consumer standpoint, there can be a sense of us bringing in too much, but also, is our food lacking nutritional quality? Is it lacking the vitamins and the minerals that we need? Saturn is in Pisces, guys. Everybody's immune system is shit right now. That's really what's going on. And nobody's really putting 2 and 2 together right now. Things that limit your immune system, like drinking or, certain pharmaceutical medication, things that impair your mental health, can have an effect on your immune system, and it can have everybody more so be willing to be sick. So as we see Saturn sextile Jupiter and Uranus, this is why I'm like, if the WEF is promoting alcohol, like your girl's about to go dry, right? And also, I don't think that cannabis is the answer either, because I think that there can be a sense of that having, especially stuff that is almost like this Frankenstein cannabis that's been processed and it's got all this like crap in it. I mean, like it's hard to find something that has not been sprayed or contaminated in some sense. Anything that's going to be mind altering can also be, you know, altering your physical vibration, your energy. Like, it's time to go with whole foods. Even if you're somebody who doesn't want to eat meat, it's time to really look at whole foods and knowing where our food is coming from, how it's actually being raised. Is it being raised humanely? Like, really, I'm the type of person that's like, now I'm like, okay, I have more incentive more than ever to be like farmers markets, buying a quarter of a cow, making sure that I'm knowing where my food is coming from as I'm, you know, transitioning into some of these transits, because I don't want to be eating stuff that has been artificially contaminated and has stuff in it or has particles in it or mRNA in it that can potentially have an effect on me, because I would like to stay organic personally. That's just my hot take. I don't know. You guys let me know. Vertical farming, because Uranus goes straight up. So Jupiter and Uranus, I think, is going to be vertical farming, but also vertical building. I think we're going to see more revolving around high rises. Obviously, rebel farmers and homesteaders, financial entitlement issues, money that's owed versus, you know, what we possess. And I'm going to keep telling you, if you do not own it, if you do not physically have it, you do not own it. Whether this is money that's on an exchange, money that's in your possession, physical goods that are in your possession. I think it's a good time for people to be looking at investing in agricultural land. I think it's a good time to be buying land with your friends and groups of people, being like, screw the system, let's buy a couple of acres and let's do it together. Will you see some weird culty things come from this? Absolutely. Yes, you will definitely see that with the sextiles to Neptune. But I do feel like this can be about people redefining what wealth means and finding that we can bring together people to create a community that can be abundant. Surge in natural materials, right? Prices of what it costs to build homes. We might see new materials that are being developed that's going to be stronger or sturdier, that's going to potentially provide us with more security, especially from the elements. So to keep us from, you know, having as much water damage, or to protect from earthquakes or from other things where like the foundation is stronger. So we might see some new materials that are brought in that can do that. What else? Copper. I think Uranus and Taurus with Jupiter. Maybe I'm optimistic, but I do think it's going to be big for natural gas. We're going to hear more about trees becoming eradicated. And I hope that doesn't happen, because I feel like that's absolutely crazy. It's like mind boggled to see so many of these scientists and people who are coming forward, who are pushing back on the narrative of this climate agenda and, you know, this crisis. And, you know, people like John Kerry and other people who have been screaming and hollering, saying it's going to be the end of the world for years, and we're still here. Recently I was listening to, I don't remember who it was, but it was one of the leaders from the Middle East, and they were having a back and forth with somebody from WEF, and it was like a woman being like, well, we need climate, you know, change. We need that because it's affecting women and children and this and that. And like, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And he just straight up was like, no, like, you know, no, I'm not subscribing to this. Some of the things that you're saying, I not only do I not agree with, but I know that they are not factual. And so I have hope that we are going to start to see some people who are going to push back, and they're going to rebel and really start showing us with facts and figures and scientific proof that some of these innovations that we have for having a cleaner, more sustainable future may not necessarily be cleaner or more sustainable. They may actually produce just as much, if not more, you know, distress to our environment than what we currently are. From what I understand, some of these lab-grown meats are actually producing more issues for the environment through the production and through the other chemicals and things that are being used. I personally have had several friends who identified as being vegans and vegetarians for many years, only to see them come around and go, not only do I realize from a physical standpoint that I need, you know, more minerals and protein and things, but the more that they've learned about agricultural processes and the fact that there is stuff going into the ground that does have animal kind of I guess like compost related materials. They realize that there's no way to kind of escape that unless you know that you're, doing your own gardening. But, in the last year or so, we've seen a decline of more than 30% of fertilizer around the world. What do you guys think that's going to do? That's going to create shortages for farmers. That's going to create issues with supplies to be able to introduce these global means to feed people. My advice is find ways to become more independent. Focus on really being open to dramatic changes in your values and how you're investing. Build on your faith and your beliefs. Jupiter is connected to prayer. It is connected to optimism. It is connected to our higher selves. But we have to put that faith into action. So it's going to bring about situations that, may test our faith and bring some sense of enlightenment in the process. But it's allowing us to connect more to the relationship, I think, that we have to the earth and tapping into our natural instincts. What do you guys think? Let me know. I'd love to hear your comments. Obviously, this is just my first take, so I know it was a little all over the place, but in future videos, like the one in the new year, and as we get closer to this conjunction, we're going to talk more about this. I think as soon as we start seeing Pluto, getting into Aquarius, you're going to see the beginning process, and I would encourage you guys to really pay attention in the new year, because we're going to see a ton of planets move through Aquarius, start squaring Uranus. So the writing will actually be on the wall mid-February as all these planets in Aquarius start squaring Uranus. We're going to start seeing where this is basically saying like, hey, this thing is breaking down. It's not working. We have to create some kind of change. And then you guys will start to see that emerge in the spring. Let me know, where is this happening in your chart? How are you feeling with these energies so far? I always appreciate your guys' your comments. I always get a good laugh out of some of them. Me personally, I gotta tell you guys, my North Node is at 21 degrees of Aquarius. My South Node's in Leo. And so this is gonna square the nodes exactly and oppose my Sun and my Mercury. So I've been feeling like I've stuck my finger in a light socket for like the last 2 years with this opposition, but it's brought me to creating more of this content. It's made me be able to do this and make a living doing this by giving you guys information and also being able to teach other people about astrology. So that in itself shows how that community effort really does make it possible for everybody to benefit, right? Because some of you guys take this information and you plan your year or your meetings or your trips, or it makes you, become better aware of your relationships with other people. I really, really, really want to continue doing this. This is like something that I made a decision a couple of years ago that's like, okay, I guess I'm kind of like blood in, blood out at this point. There's no getting out of this astrology gang for me. But yeah, I look forward to doing more videos on this for you guys in the future, and I will leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this particular video, and man, holy cow is right. Until next time, I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.